Good afternoon, everyone. I know it's been a tiring afternoon with no AC and everyone is sweating. And imagine that these guys will talk for another 45 minutes. So let's begin with the conversation. So today, on this date, 14th October 1956, 61 years back, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, he embraced Buddhism. He, with along his millions of followers, they rejected Hinduism and challenged the caste system and promoted the rights of the Dalit community. Conversion is not a child's game. It's not like we are wearing one coat today and then we will change another one. So, if conversion is such an important phenomenon, we need to understand what triggered this mass conversion in history. We want to understand what was going on in the minds of the untouchables at that time and how did Babasaheb reach this decision. Is it something that it could have done different? Has it achieved what it intended to do? So, with all these questions in our mind, we want to get on with the discussion, and we have invited some of the panel members. I would like to give a quick introduction about each of them, starting with Sujata Vane. Sujata has been living in New Jersey for past 12 years, and she is currently working as assistant teacher in elementary public school. Then Harsh Raj has completed his master's in social work from Tata Institute of Social Science, Mumbai. He also completed MPhil in psychiatric social work from Central Institute of Psychiatry, Ranchi. He has been working as a therapist in Pennsylvania since 2006. He is a licensed clinician working as a medical social worker at Lay Learning Network. Jyoti Dingre is an electronics engineer. She has worked as a software developer at IBM Bangalore and has a passion for baking and dance. Nitin Surikare is an engineering graduate. He is working as a manager in a reputed software company. He lives in New York and has been associated with Ambedkar International Mission for past 12 years. He has been an Ambedkarite activist since his college days and has worked on multiple projects for the betterment of the society. Sujit Shende has been living in New Jersey for the last 10 years and is a nurse by profession. He is an avid reader and has read many books on Babasaheb, Jyotirao Phule and Buddhism. Dr. Megha Kaskande is a dentist and is currently working as a dental assistant in New Jersey. She has been living in New Jersey with the family for the last 8 years and is involved in a lot of cultural and social activities. So welcome all of you to this forum. And without any further delay, let's start with the discussion. So as we all know, that his historic conversion was focused mainly on the untouchables. So let me ask you, why do you think it was focused only on Dalits or the untouchables? What do you think has been going on in their mind or the situation at that time?
Thank you, Vivek. Let's try to understand first about the caste system hierarchy in Hindu religious system. It divides into 4 castes or categories: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and last, the Shudras. And let me also explain the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Brahmins that handle the education and spiritual process, Kshatriyas that protect and administer the community or country, Vaishyas who trade and do business, and Shudras, like I said, the last class, also called or known as the untouchables, did the menial jobs like the working in the fields, pulling human waste, and basically did the work no one wanted. This discrimination was outlawed in India in 1955, but the prejudice still continues. And now we're going to look to the root cause. So the root cause of caste system was greed for power. The problem is not using reservation, but greed of the caste supremacists. African American slavery, which was untouchability, is a form of slavery. African Americans were slaves too, but they were still allowed to cook for whites and allowed to take the kids to school. But this was not allowed for untouchables. And atrocities, after that, they were separated from from living together in the same town and had to live outside the town and village's boundaries. They were not allowed to enter the temples, schools. Their houses were burned for having purchased land for cultivation, denied the right to drink water from the school hand pump, having different set of utensils set aside for you. They were beaten if they refused to carry their animals and eat the carrion. Being Dalit means to be a target of numerous hate crimes and violence. Yeah.
Alright, thank you, Sujata. So this appears to be, the question of law and order. So if the law and order is supporting the Dalits, they shouldn't have any problem. And even Dr. Ambedkar, as a law minister, he ensured that there are safeguards for his people. So by law, the untouchability is punishable crime. So what do you think is the problem?
Vivek, what you are talking about is the constitutional law. But if you know, there is something which is called as the social law as well. And the social laws are basically derived from the religion and the religious beliefs. So that was the basic reason when Dr. Ambedkar proposed the Hindu Code Bill, it was opposed widely with the constitution. Of course, it was accepted later on with bits and pieces, but as of Dr. Ambedkar, whatever he was proposing the Hindu Code Bill, that was basically opposed. Say for example, just give us one example, maybe let's talk about a Muslim community. So in Muslim community, the ladies are not allowed to wear, ladies are supposed to wear burqa or hijab or something. So by constitution, we have right to wear anything that we want. But the religious beliefs and the religious laws does not allow the Muslim women to wear the clothes of their choice. They have to wear burqa or restrictions of this. So this is which is derived from the religious belief. There are multiple examples that you can give about the Dalits and the untouchables. Jata has mentioned that the untouchables were not allowed to enter the temple. They were not even allowed to, they had a restricted entry in the villages as well. They were living in the outskirts of the village, and within the village as well, they did not have the permission to enter. So forget about taking out the water from the public well. Even they do not have the access to the public well. Now, if the law guarantees them to have access, law has given them the freedom to go around in the free country. You can go wherever you want. But the society and the social village, the laws which are governed from the social village, does not allow them to do so. Then that is not the law or the rights that one should be looking for. So the laws which are guaranteed by constitution but not given by the society are not the laws. The rights which are given by the constitution but not by the society are not the legal laws that you can say. And unfortunately, Dalits did not have the social rights. So they were barred from the social liberty. The social liberty was barred, and as long as there is no social liberty, the constitutional law does not apply.
Okay, so I understand that the law was there, but it was not helping the untouchables. And if it was not helping, why do you think the conversion will help? How can it help?
That's a very important question, Vivek. And to understand why conversion was necessary, it is very important to understand the problem of untouchability. Untouchability is a class struggle. It is a struggle between two classes, the Hindu class and the untouchables. It is not a struggle against an individual. It is injustice done by one class against another. Now, to understand this, that when does this struggle rise? This struggle arises when the untouchables start claiming equal rights with the Hindus. But the Hindus believe that the untouchables have low status. They are at the lowest rung. And if the untouchables continue to remain at the lowest rung, they alone will be lived happily. So, now we know that there is a struggle here, and it arises when untouchables want equal treatment. So how do we survive this struggle? And to survive any struggle, we need strength. And
there are three types of strength known to mankind. First is manpower, second finance, and third is mental strength. Now if you consider manpower, untouchables are low in population, they are scattered through the villages, and that's the reason that they cannot come to rescue of each other. So manpower is not there. Now if you consider finance, do they have finance? No, they don't have trade, they don't have any business, no service, so no finance as well. Now if you consider the third strength, that is the mental strength, as we all know that since they don't have financial strength, it's very obvious that their emotional strength is also low. They are low in confidence. And due to this, they have become unenergetic and pale. So now we know that these are struggles. But there are other minorities in our country. Those are Muslims and Christians. So do they also face the same struggle? No. If you consider in a village, there are 2 houses of Muslims, and if some problem happens with them, if they are harassed, the whole Muslim population of India supports them. But that does not happen with the untouchables, because they are scattered through the villages and they are not organized and they don't have the strength, they cannot come together to help each other. So these are the 3 strengths. Now, due to casteism and religious fanatism, a person cannot help, they don't help people in poverty. Even if they want to help, they cannot eradicate poverty. So, if you ask any person, like, why you don't help people, untouchables, so their answer would be, like, they don't belong to our community. So why should we go and help? And because of this, we realize that to gather strength, we need to leave the religion we are in and accept a religion outside it. And the examples are there, like when Dalits converted to Muslim and they accepted Islam and or they became Christians, they were not treated unequal by the Hindus. So it's very important to come out of that religion and accept another religion, connect to another community. And that's why Baba Saheb converted to Buddhism in the year 1956. Thank you.
So, okay, that makes sense that, it was evident that to carve a path for a better life, conversion was necessary. But then what we talk about is just a material aspect of conversion. Was there any spiritual aspect as well?
You are right, Vivek. There are 2 aspects of conversion. As Gurudev said, that we need 3 strengths: manpower, finance, and mental strength. For that, we need material as well as spiritual. Now let us understand what is religion. Religion is Vedika. And why is it important? Several groups of people define it. But only one is meaningful and available. That this need to be worked together. It needs the Buddha together. The Mansa जोड़ने एक लगे. Now let us understand what should be the real nature of religion and what should be the relation between man and the society. The modern social philosophers give the answer for that. Some state that ultimate goal of the society is to achieve happiness of the people. Some say that the qualities and energies of the people will develop their self. And some say that to create ideal society. The concept of Hindu religion is totally different from this. There is no concept of whatever we discuss. They have no place for individual there. They have no teaching of how individuals behave with each other. In Hindu religion, there is a class concept. does not teach anything about individual progress. To me, individual welfare and progress is the real aim of religion. Vivek, to uplift individuals, three factors required: sympathy, equity, and liberty. Can we say by experience this factor exists for us in Hinduism? There is no sympathy for us in Hinduism. There is no equality in Hinduism. Rather, the caste system is based on great inequality. Freedom. Do we have freedom in Hinduism? Just like talk about atrocity. We have no freedom to wear clothes, no freedom to walk on the road. Friends, physical and mental health is important for our development. Vivek, for me, these are the reasons for the conversion. It deals with how to make one's life successful. Thank you.
So it's understood that the conversion is necessary. But like you said, there were other minorities too, like there were Muslims and Christians, and some even the untouchables, they converted to these religions like Muslims and Christianity, and even Sikhism. So why do you think Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar chose only Buddhism?
That's a great important question, Vivek. As you have heard the saying, दूध का जला छाछ भी फूट के पीता है. So Dr. Ambedkar has suffered so much all his life because of religion. He and someone who was responsible for the lives and future of millions of people will not decide a religion just in haste. So Dr. Ambedkar had a lot of pressure from representatives of different religion, and he studied almost for 30 years all different religions to decide the best of the best for himself and his people. So as Ambedkar said, I like the religion that teaches liberty, equality and fraternity. So for this sake, Buddhism is a religion which is having Indian origin, and also moreover it's a religion of ethics, morality and learning, which has no place for caste system. No doubt, like all other religions, predominantly like Sikhism, Muslims, Christianity, also they teach the same, but there is some difference in Buddhism. The center of all of the religions is the connection between the God and man. But in Buddhism, it's the relation between the man and man which is the main focus. So people tried worshipping gods, supernatural, for their existence and survival. But Buddha, he mentioned the Four Noble Truths which gave the path to liberation, and also which he also mentioned the Eight Noble Truths which led to end of suffering. So Buddha also taught liberty, equality and fraternity, which is a Buddhist ideology, and also the main pillars of modern democracy. While teaching, Buddha preached liberty in thoughts and action, and which is also necessary for human dignity. Buddha liberated Shudras from slavery. He also preached equality between the genders. He treated women equal to men and also gave them the right to be priests. Fraternity is also another principle which is very important, not only for democracy, but also for peaceful coexistence of humanity. Buddha never encouraged idol worshipping. It is the most scientific religion. I can go on and on to talk the different teachings of Buddha and Buddha's Dhamma, but I guess this forum will not have enough time to discuss all.
Right. Thank you. So I think I understand why Buddhism was chosen. Now that it has been 61 years since the conversion, do you think that this has improved the lives of new Buddhists over the Hindu Dalits?
Thank you, Vivek, for not calling Dalit an anti-person. Conversion to Buddhism gave a new identity. In the public meeting organized in Dadar, Babasaheb gave a speech your speech, Baba Sahib said, convert for getting organized, convert for securing equality, convert for getting different, convert for that your domestic life may be happy. After converting to Buddhism, you are now under one umbrella. And literally, you are not under the clutches of caste system anymore. You are more organized, regain self-respect, and working for the betterment of society, and developing brotherhood and start uniting. Your way of thinking improve, and you can analyze what is good for you and what is good for society. You feel both spiritually and mentally liberated. Various studies show that Dalits who follow Dr. Ambedkar and Buddhism converted to Buddhism what has progressed in all fields compared with Hinduism. Better education and new opportunities for them for advancement. Their women and children enjoy better status in family and society. They are saved from religious exploitation, and Buddhism definitely liberates spiritually and mentally.
So, I can understand Sudhir, that whatever he is saying are more of a hypothetical thing. And that is true as well. And whatever the progress that Dalits or individuals have made, it is because changes. The Buddhism conversion to Buddhism has brought a lot of changes in their life. But is that just a hypothetical thing, or is there a way that we can prove it? So just to do that, basically compared, we have two censuses that was done recently, like in 2001, there was a census done, and in 2011 there was another census that was done. So when you look into the numbers and the figures into these two censuses, basically compared both censuses, and the numbers basically are very supportive to what Sujit Babu has said. So far in the censuses, you can see there are almost 8.4 million Buddhists in India. Now, out of these 8.4 million Buddhists, around 87% of the population is converted. So that means only 13% are the original Buddhists or the Buddhists who are, by birth by that time. So almost 87 Buddhists in India are the converted ones. So when I compare the statistics of different, say for example, sex ratio, literacy ratio, the work participation ratio and all, and when that ratio reflects the Buddhism, I would be free to say that yes, most of that is the converted Buddhist people in the world. So let's look into some of the statistics that is there in the censuses. Sex ratio. Say for example, a woman to male participation ratio. For Buddhist or Neo-Buddhist, you can say it is 965 per 1,000 males, which is much better than scheduled caste Hindus. For scheduled caste Hindus, it is 946 per 1,000. That is even better with the national average of India as well. So national average of India is 943, whereas the Neo-Buddhist, the sex ratio is around 965. For Muslims, it is 951. For Sikh community, it is 903. So this basically gives you a clear understanding that the sex ratio is much better in Neo-Buddhism. Now, let's see about the birth ratio for 0 to 6 years of kids. There are almost 11.62% children which are into 0 to 6 years age. Now, national average for this is 13.59. So, in other words, how to understand these terms is, you can say for each 100 population, there are 2 less kids in Buddhist community. So that means Buddhist community people, the converted people, they understand the population growth. So they have control, every family will have 2 kids and something like that. So they have even control the population in that sense. Now, after converting to Buddhism, as various people or panelists have said, that Dr. Ambedkar focused on education. So let's see if that has really reflected in these years. So in terms of education, the literacy ratio, when you compare the literacy ratio back in 2001 and in 2011, if you say in 2001 it was 72.7%, the literacy rate in New Buddhist. whereas in 2011, the literacy rate is around 81.3%. So there is you can see a steady growth of literacy rate in Buddhist people. Now, if you see this, the national average is 72.98%, almost 73%. For Hindus, it is 73.2%, and for scheduled caste, which is the Dalits or Hindus, the scheduled caste people in Hindu, it is 66.07%. So you can see the clear demarcation that for New Buddhist it is 81.3%. For scheduled caste Hindus it is 66.0%. So clear demarcation of around 18 to 20% more literate people in New Buddhist community. Now, with this better education and the improved social status through the education, I definitely help the New Buddhists to contribute more in the national economy as well. So how they are contributing to the economy? That they are getting a better jobs with the better education and the better mindset and the better work environment. They are getting out better jobs, and that reflects in the work participation rate as well. For Buddhists, the work participation rate is 43.15%, whereas for scheduled caste it is 14.87%. National average for work participation is 39.79%. Whereas for Muslims it is 32.6, for Sikh community it is 41.3, for Jain it is 35.5%. So you can clearly say, like for New Buddhist or the Buddhist community, take it for the national average or compare it with the Hindu society or the scheduled caste or any other religion in India. There are all the ratios, all the numbers in constitution that basically talks the same thing what Vibha was talking about. There is a definitely tremendous growth in terms of manual power, manpower, the strength in terms of mental strength, physical strength, the emotional strength and so on. So definitely there is a very good growth in British community.
Thank you. So today, we are a modern and developing country. But do you think, like in today's environment, is there any psychological change in the progressive Hindus?
Thank you, Vivek. Am I audible?
Yes.
We are actually made to believe that there is an impact on the caste system due to globalization, especially economic impact. But there have been research. We believe in like evidence-based research that proves that that it's not true. There are some eminent authors who have written books, like Professor Catherine Newman and Professor Sukhdev Thorat. They have written a book. They have proved that the impact of globalization, it increases inequality within the caste, and caste, age-old caste actually they say it disintegrates, but no, it's still there. And you must have seen a documentary by Padma K. Stalin. The title is India Untouched, and she presents through this documentary that there's a strong hold of caste in modern India. And as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar pointed out, that in India, people are not much, they don't have the empathetic attitude regarding poverty and suffering. And even if there are affluent people who want to address the issue, and empathy and all that, but they try to help only people from their caste or their religion. They don't try to address the root cause, to eradicate the root cause of the caste system. They don't try to do that, and especially in the villages where the majority of the Dalits, they suffer tremendously. Under the head of the villages, of course, it's a dominant caste. So they suffer, in the villages, by the dominant caste, and in the cities, they are, treated as a secondary citizen, and whether it's a government position or they're deprived of promotions in the private sector. And definitely you all, like we now, we all carry cell phones and can access the internet. Every minute there's an atrocity atrocity done on a Dalit. So the rates are alarming, and with globalization, the caste Hindus, they take the caste mindset to other parts of the country. And they want to maintain that identity. So caste issue has become a global phenomenon because they carry it outside India. And like when it comes to caste-based atrocities, you have definitely seen, in the modern era, about the Kerala incident, Una incident, Rohit Vandana case, and Jawapura murders, and then Saharanpur massacres. And one quick example I would like to point out is, like, when you believe it, like in Shirdi, Maharashtra, a Dalit youth was beaten to death just because he had Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's song as a ringtone. This is the height. Where people are intolerant. And this happened recently. And even if there are authors or leaders who want to raise their voice, they are suppressed. Like a good example would be Narendra Davolkar, Govind Pansare, Imam Kalburgi, and most recently Gauri Amkesh. And so people are able to see the negative impact of caste, and slowly they're trying to come out of the caste bracket or the clutches of caste. And one positive example that I can quote is in last year, 2016, in Nagpur, there were 5 lakh members from OBC community. They embraced Buddhism. They left Hinduism and they have embraced Buddhism. Thank you.
Thank you. So listening to what you said, there are still atrocities going on. We have embraced Buddhism, but you see that it's still there. It's not going away. So when do you think you see yourself in the next 40 years?
Like I said, this discrimination was outlawed in India in 1995, but the prejudice still continues today. The Dalits are ranks of India's lowest ranks of India's traditional caste system, and are traditionally considered impure and pushed to the margins of Indian society and by the Hindu religion. I think that if we follow Baba Saheb Ambedkar's footsteps and continue to campaign and progress for the Dalit rights as a human right, it will lead us to prosperity and progress. We will and we should fight for our people as Ambedkarites. If Baba Saheb Ambedkar would not have been here for us, we would never have overcome from all of these problems and hurdles. We cannot let and must not let the Dalits be hostages and punished for those who impose their rights and discriminate with the caste, creed and gender. We should make efforts to establish equality and follow the Eightfold Path as told by Buddha and Ambedkar and act per Buddha's principle and teachings. If we help ourselves and we do things by ourselves, we will definitely come to some prosperity and peace.
40 years from now, I see myself to be emotionally and financially capable of providing helping hand to people in need of education. Because with education, I can come close to the goal of Dr. Ambedkar, and that would really make me proud. Thank you.
Vivek, I think from my personal experience, if we understand Baba Sahib by reading books and follow the path which Buddha gave us, we can overcome our many troubles we are facing nowadays. I think Buddha and Baba Sahib teachings give us all the answers to the questions that arises in our day-to-day life, no matter what is happening around us. I see after 40 years that peace will come in our community as well as in our country. For this, we have to work hard to spread the noble word and teaching to others to help them understand the truth. May history repeat again, and may we all live peacefully. Thank you.
Everybody expects a peaceful, happy and contented life for themselves. Similarly, by walking on the path of Buddha and Dr. Ambedkar, I see a bright future for ourselves and our future generation. I see everyone understands and follows the core values and help our community in whatever way possible to our fellow brothers and sisters to achieve their career goals. Thanks.
Next 40 years is a long time, I said, but actually when my daughter was born, I was thinking that, she should have been born in a caste-free society. Unfortunately, that did not happen. She is still in the caste-ridden society. So, though our goal should be that we should eradicate caste system from India or over the world right now, I don't really see, to ask me frankly, I don't see that happening in the next 40 years. So for me, what I would like to see in the community change is, so far we have struggled our life in getting a basic education and stabilizing in our career and jobs and financially getting stable. Now that we are financially stable